Well, good evening. Welcome to Wingmen. My name is Todd Burnett. This is Mr. Mike Linch, and we will be with you for this evening for our online gathering. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is, once again, Todd Burnett. I have been with Wingmen for about 3 years now in South Atlanta, and I have thoroughly enjoyed getting involved with men, serving together, as well as meeting together with our element groups. And today I have with me Mr. Mike Linch. Mike, welcome.
Man, it's great to be here, Todd. It's great to gather with you guys, and I'm excited for the journey, buddy.
Absolutely. Mike, before we dig deeper into some of the things that we're going to talk about this evening, will you just let our audience know a little bit about yourself? Kind of give us a little history. Tell us about your journey, how you became a pastor, and how you ended up here at Northstar.
That's great. Great question. Yeah, so I have been at Northstar now for almost 25 years. I never dreamed I'd be doing what I'm doing. I go back in college where we met up at Liberty University. I was out there playing baseball, and that was my dream. And due to lack of performance and abilities, that was the end of that dream. And it ended up getting in ministry and served a few years in student ministry, and found myself in this community, even graduating Liberty. And then we started Northstar back in 1997. And so, man, to get to be here for this job, I've been in 2 churches in my almost 30 years of ministry, and it's just, you look back on it now and you go, Lord, you knew what you were doing. I didn't see it. You knew it. Met my wife at Liberty. We have 2 amazing kids, 27 and 24, both in full-time ministry, still very involved in the athletic world and do a lot with athletes and coaches and scouts in that world. And so it's neat to see how it all works together and see the blend of how it all happens, but how faith's the centerpiece of all those things.
Absolutely. And yes, we were at Liberty together.
That's right. And
man, that place has changed, but God's brought us back together once again, and it's just thrilling and exciting to know that we can reconnect, but not only we can reconnect, just to watch what God's doing in your life, not only in your church, but in the community as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those things and how we as men can connect with others and how we can lock arms together and serve each other and walk this journey that God's called us to. So with that in mind, I know that you've been a pastor here at Northstar for about 25 years. What has been one of the most difficult things you've experienced as a pastor in the last 25 years?
I think for all of us, and no matter what level you're at in business or in life, we all have those things. We go back to the baseball world. Gosh, we're right in the middle of baseball season right now. We all have curveballs and things that come our way we didn't see coming and things we didn't expect. I think probably going into it, if you'd asked me this question while we were sitting in the Marriott at Liberty, and you just said, one day when you're a pastor, what's it going to be like? And I would have said, well, it's going to be this and this. I think one of the things you don't see coming is the years when you're hurt. I think all of us in our journey, we get discouraged and we find points, as great as things may be, we're discouraged about where we're at financially or discouraged where we're at as an organization or a church. So I think one of those things that I've experienced is that discouragement, but I think on the counter of it is I've had a lot of encouragement. And as you look back on the journey, the encouragement's been way bigger, but boy, when you're in the middle of that pain and you're in the middle of what you're going through as a man and as a leader, I think those discouraging times can get very daunting. And I don't think I would have thought I would have experienced that. I would have told you, I'm a positive glass half full person. Yeah, I am. But those discouraging times hit. I know the great leadership guy, Sam Chand. If you've never read Sam Chand, phenomenal. Dr. Chand, in his book, Leadership Pain, he said, we all grow to the threshold of our pain. Wow. We cannot grow past the threshold of our pain. You think of the athletes you work with, you push them to their limit. You find out what their limit is. And that limit is what's going to determine how far they're going to go. Well, the pain that comes into our lives determines our limits sometimes. Pain isn't fun. And I would say one of the things I've learned is the 25 years have had lots of pains. But they've had lots of growth opportunities and lots of positives too.
Awesome. I'm going to go down that road a little bit more with you, because you talked about curveballs and you talked about, setbacks and discouragements. I think we as men, we often experience that in our lives. Sometimes we don't like to admit it, we try to push through, or we try to hide those things because we don't want to appear that anything is wrong. We've got it all together. So when you hit road bumps, or you had curveballs thrown your way, discouragement, what are some things we can do as men to work through that?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think the biggest lesson, and you and I have had to learn, we're about the same age, is you can't do it by yourself. You cannot do it alone. And you will try. I tried, and I'm like, this will pass. I'll be fine. And then you find your mind just, it's playing tricks on you. And then you're making situations a lot worse than they are because you don't want to talk about them. So I would say, number one, don't do it alone. Number two, don't think it's the end of the story. And I think for all of us, you and I are at the age now, we're both in our 30s. All right, you and I are at the age now that we look back at it and we go, yeah, I know you get through it. But boy, when you're in it, you feel like there's a period where there's really just a comment. And I think just knowing this season's going to end, don't do it by yourself. Know the season's going to end. And I think the third part of that is never forget how good God is. Yeah. In the middle of it, don't stop giving thanks to the Lord, writing down things you're thankful for. Because those are the things when you go, yeah, I got this crappy thing, but man, look at all these great things I have going. And I think that if you can handle those three things, you will push through that pain that you experience. Sure.
That's some great insight. So let me go off of one of those things. So you said, don't do it alone.
Yeah.
As men, because you're in a church setting, you're very involved in your community, and we'll come back to that because I want to talk more about your involvement in the community. But you're in a church setting, and a lot of men have their own businesses. They're CEOs, or they might be a warehouse worker. It doesn't matter. There's men in all different arenas of life. When you say, don't do it alone, what are some things we as men can do to not be alone? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You have to be intentional. Because I think as guys, we all grow up with our buddies. We go to college, we have our buddies. We get married, we have our spouse, and then we insulate ourselves. And we go, well, I'm married, but yeah, we need more than that. In fact, I just finished, funny you bring that up, I finished in a Bible study with a group of executives here at my church and in our community. And the Bible study was on Paul and his companions. So we think about Paul being the maverick, right? He's the guy out there charging the hill with Christianity. Absolutely. But how does he start every letter? Writing to all his companions. Paul didn't do it by himself. Here's this maverick of the faith, trailblazer, who thanks Thomas and Didymus and all these other guys because he wasn't by himself. Paul did the journey with others. So I think you're going to be incredibly intentional about seeking out those to do the journey. That's why I love Wingmen. I love what you do because you're providing an outlet for guys to go, yeah, man, I'm not alone. So I do a Monday morning Pro Scouts college baseball coach Bible study every Monday. Been doing it for 4 or 5 years now. We do it on Zoom. We did it on Zoom before Zoom was cool. And so we did it on Zoom. We run 65 to 80 of the biggest name coaches in the game of baseball every Monday. Do you know why they've learned? They can't do it by themselves. Wow. They may be the cover of the magazine, and we've got 4 of our guys in the NCAA regionals right now. One of them may make a run for the College World Series. But at the end of the day, life's life, and the journey's the journey, and they can't do it by themselves. Sure. What I know about those men, they have other places they could be. They have other things. I don't know them. They don't go to my church. They live in Sacramento, Ontario, Texas, Colorado. They live all over the country. They've never met me, but they were intentional to go, hey, I heard about something that'll add value to my life, so I'm going to carve out 45 minutes every Monday to connect on Zoom with a bunch of guys. And those guys now are growing in their faith because they were resourceful and intentional. So I think that's what every guy's got to do is go, I can't do it, so I got to do something about it.
Right. And being intentional, I like that word because let's be honest, as men, we get so bogged down with the everyday routines. We have a lot of things vying for our time. Yep. And so being intentional, you said a great word, carve out that time of being able to be with other men. to do life together, whether it's through a monthly meeting, a weekly meeting, an element group, in some form or fashion.
That's
I think
right.
I think you hit it.
What's so funny, because you think about all of our lives, there's nobody sitting on the other end of this camera that isn't intentional about it. I mean, it doesn't matter what job you do, you got your day laid out. You don't just show up and go, well, I hope the day ends up great. No, that's how you get fired. That's how you lose your job. You show up and go, I got to meet with this person, this person, this person. I got to do this task, this task, this task. But yet we leave our personal development and our spiritual development while trying to get to it.
Yeah.
We don't put them in the calendar.
Right.
We just try to get to it,
Right.
and we lose.
Yeah.
And so, it does take intentionality, and I need it.
Yep.
I need it.
Yeah. And I think you've seen this as well as I, because I know you help with the baseball program here in the community, the high school program. Yep. And I also, the job that I have allows me the freedom to be a community coach as well. I do basketball, and it is amazing. That's a great point. It is amazing how parents will, especially dads, will carve out so much time for their kids and their schedules, whether it's baseball, football, and getting to camps, getting to practice, all these things, but they don't carve out time for themselves to spend time with other men.
That's right.
That they can be encouraged.
That's exactly right.
And
That's exactly right.
That is awesome. That's some good advice and some great words of wisdom there. So let's go to a little bit about, we'd mentioned the fact that you are involved in the community. One thing I love about your church here at Northstar that you're pastoring is you guys are committed to being in the community. And I know not just your church, but you as well. So you practice what you preach.
Right.
And so you're very involved. Can you tell us some of the things that you're personally involved in within the community? And then I want to highlight a little bit about what you do with coaching.
Yeah. So when Northstar started back in 1997, we met with a gentleman out of Cincinnati, and he had an interesting word. Our founding pastor, Ike, who many of you may have heard of before. Ike's a great guy. He's been around a long time. Ike was meeting with him, and Ike was telling him we were planting a church. And the guy stopped him. He said, listen, don't ever go plant a church. Go reach a city. Well, that totally changes your mindset. Planning means that we're expecting them to come here. Reaching means we're going to go there. So we set a commitment that we were going to serve our community to the Lord. We were going to serve until somebody asked why. Meaning we're not waiting on the school to come to us. We're going to go. We're going to initiate. And so that began a process of volunteering at schools and working in businesses. I remember meeting with a Coca-Cola executive, and he said, Coca-Cola's philosophy for many years was war. They wanted to be within arm's reach. Wherever you went in the world, they wanted you to run into Coca-Cola. That's what we wanted to be as a church. No matter where you went, we wanted you to run into Northstar. So that meant we got to be outside these walls. We got to go serve. Well, that was 25 years ago. We didn't have money, but we had time. We could do that.
Right.
Now we're able to do more than that. So now we have a facility. We're able to use our facility. We were talking about it outside before we walked in. We're able to use our facility for the community. We don't charge the community. The community gets to come and use it. Why would you put the wear and tear on the building? Because everybody who walks through that door may need the Lord and may need, when their life hits a crisis, the only church they're going to know is Northstar. And so we want to be that. We want to be that open door. And so we serve through the schools. We serve through our local businesses and government. We serve all those things. And so for me, I want to have teeth. I want to have skin in the game. So I serve as a local high school football chaplain in the fall and a baseball coach chaplain in the spring, and it keeps me around people who don't go to church. And so it's nice to pastor all day, but it is nice to put on a hat in the afternoon and do something else in the afternoon and to serve like everybody else has to serve.
Sure.
You're a nobody. I'm a nobody there, and it's nice. It's a good change. So it's that constant reminder. I know the story. There's hundreds of thousands of people within 8 miles of this church who don't know it. So I got to get out there where they are.
One of the things, again, that I love about my job, it allows me the flexibility to go and to be a coach. I'll be honest with you, one of the things it does for me as a man is it gives me energy when I serve and finding something outside of work.
Yep.
finding something outside of the daily routine, things that I know I have to do.
Yep.
But this I get to do, and I love to do it, and part of serving is I think so vital in just me developing as a man, me developing as a husband, as a father, as a follower of Christ, getting to serve. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And so for some of you guys that are in your 20s and 30s, you're at that age right now. I mean, you're living through your kids, man. It's awesome. Serve it, work it. One day you're going to get in our age, in our 50s, my kids are grown.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, the older you get, the more cynical and judgmental you can get. And what this does, being around kids every day, it keeps your heart fresh.
Yeah.
So in life, we're either selfish or selfless. Serving causes selflessness, not selfishness.
Absolutely.
And we battle it.
Yeah.
The enemy wants you selfish. And so doing that, it does, man. It's just a great outlet. It's good for your soul to get out and do it.
I agree with that. Matter of fact, I was with a gentleman. He had pastored a church for about 24, 25 years. Now he's in his early 70s. He's a mentor of mine. And we were talking about that the other day. You know, he goes, I just don't want to be that guy as I grow older. And he said, you know, I'm committed to 3 things. And one of the things he says, I am committed to continually being around other men, which we talked about earlier. And he said, the second thing I'm committed to is I just don't want to be that guy that just complains.
Yep.
You know, I mean, listen, I know it costs more to get an Uber ride than it did a taxi 25 years ago. I'm just not going to.
That's good. That's a good word.
I'm just not going to be a complainer.
Yep.
And he said the other thing I'm going to do is, and I love this, he goes, I'm going to find somewhere to serve. And so he does. He serves with a ministry called Pine Cove. But anyway, I just think, like you said, that just brings energy to who we are as men. And I agree, you know, when you're in your 20s, 30s, it looks different, but you know as well as I do, those days don't last long.
They do not last long.
The days may be long, but the years are short. Yep. And so, but anyhow, great. Well, listen, so you're involved with the baseball team, the local baseball team. Tell us about your opportunities as, you know, so your children are grown.
That's correct.
Out of the house?
Out of the house.
And so you and your wife are
We're living the dream, basically, Todd. We're living the dream.
Others think they're living a nightmare,
That's right.
but we're living the dream.
Living the dream.
But so your kids are out of the house. And so now you go back to being a mentor to these young men that are on that baseball field.
Yep.
And I know that brings you great energy. I just look on your face.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, I'm ready to talk now.
Yeah.
I'm ready to jump into this. Tell us about what that means, not only for those young men being mentored, but for you as a man, a male figure who has that opportunity to mentor them. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's a gift. It's a gift because, you know, we use a phrase a lot at Northstar, God never brings you through what he brought you through to not help someone else get through what they're going through. So you take the game of life, we've all been through it, right? Absolutely. We've all got stuff to pass on.
Absolutely.
We were able to survive the journey we talked about. But the game of baseball was the same way. The game of baseball is a great teacher. I didn't end up playing after I played Division I baseball, and that was it for me. That was the end of the story. But during those years, I was able to gather a lot of knowledge and learn from a lot of great people. Well, how selfish is it to now, because my kid's grown, bag it, throw it away, and go, well, I'll never use that again. Well, I want to help those kids not only with the game of baseball, but while teaching the game of baseball, help them with the game of life. The irony is my son and I do it together. And so getting to do that as a father and a son is phenomenal. Because our greatest experiences growing up were through sports together, driving to and from games. And so to now, he's 27, to do that with him is a joy. And so I can invite a kid to my office to meet with me, and they'll come like this, but they'll come because mom and dad are going to make them. Or I can sit in the bullpen and have a conversation that they will never have in my office about life, girlfriends, school, future, Jesus, and a little bit of everything, you know? And so it is a joy for me to do that. It keeps me young. It makes me not forget my roots. And it is kids are craving, same thing when you and I were in student ministry together, kids are still craving relationships.
Yep.
We can put all the all the other stuff out there, kids want a relationship. And so it allows you. We had our baseball banquet last night, end of the season banquet, and you sit down with those kids and you're reminded of relationships. And that's really what it's all about. And we're in the playoffs. We lost in the Final Four, and just the kids, the old team, the kids that come back, and they're grown now, and I've done their weddings, and I've done their dedicated children. And I mean, it's cool. So you get to be a part of kids' lives. Sure. It's a joy. It's a joy.
Absolutely. And it's a real joy. You think about that. I go back to we as men, things that can give us energy, and the way God can use us, because I think when God uses you, that gives you energy.
That's right.
And so, my challenge, I guess, to men who are listening tonight is learn to give back, learn to mentor, especially if your kids have moved on and they're out of the home. But also, if your kids are still in home, your kids have friends.
That's exactly right.
They're watching.
That's exactly right.
They're watching you as a dad. They're watching you as a coach. They're watching you as a husband. Yep. I always tell my wife this, that God is on display at all times with our marriage.
That's exactly right.
And in our home. And I think we as men need to be aware of that and take advantage of those situations. Where He's placed us.
Totally agree. And you think, for any of you that may own a boat at the lake, we don't let the boat just sit there. You got to get out and move it.
Right.
You got to get ride it. It was meant to be driven. So's your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love the leadership, and probably you and your son are on that field providing leadership.
Yep.
And oftentimes, and that's the cool thing about it, is these kids are being mentored and don't even realize it.
Yeah. No. It's just practice for them.
Absolutely. And so you have the opportunity to not only allow them to watch you as you serve, but then feel comfortable and relationally you're connected, so they can seek you for advice, and you can lead them and encourage them in that process. Let them learn from your mistakes.
Yep.
And then also let them see how you've come through, what you've learned, and so hopefully they can learn those things as well. And that's that's part of leadership.
That is.
That's
just
exactly
part of leadership.
Right. Speaking of leadership, I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
So you have a podcast.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about your podcast, because it has a lot to do with leadership.
Yeah, it does. So I've got a real passion, and the passion is to raise the spiritual temperature of leaders. Because if we can change a leader, we can change an organization, we can change a family, we can change a team. So back in 2017, as part of a bigger picture thing, but I began a podcast called Linch with a Leader, where our tagline is we interview America's greatest leaders and find out how they lead with their faith out in front. And so we go to names that you may know: Ken Blanchard, Andy Stanley, John Gordon, Shannon Bream, Christy Wright with the Ramsey, or Rachel Cruz, or whoever it is. And then there's a lot of people you wouldn't know. But there are people like you and me that are getting up, putting their shoes on, going to work, but they want to live out that faith they heard about on Sunday, and they just don't know what to do. So my goal in the podcast was to expose you to a Dave Barnes in Nashville, to go, if they can do it, you can do it too. And it's been a blast. So we're 110 episodes in. And
110?
110. Listen, man, I don't know if anybody's listening, but we have a great, and the goal of it was, and it's under LINCH, Lunch with a Leader. The goal of it was, if we were to stick a microphone, if I were to have lunch with Ken Blanchard, and I stuck a mic on the table and recorded my conversation with him, that you could get to listen in. And so we have had a great run. So if nobody ever listening got better, I get better because of the people I've gotten to meet.
Absolutely.
And I'm encouraged by their faith and strengthened. I had a gentleman on this past one, Daniel Ritchie. Daniel was born with no arms. So I'm watching a guy across my Zoom picking up a pen with his feet and writing, taking his headphones off with his feet. And he's out preaching and teaching the word and telling his story of how good God is. And I think I've had a bad day, right? I mean, it's that whole thing. So I enjoy doing it. It's a hobby. It's a fun little hustle. It's a fun little thing that I hope other people get to benefit from. And it's been used in some great ways.
Absolutely. And I know it gives, there again, we talk about it. It's something that gives you energy.
That's right.
We as men need to find things that give us energy.
That's exactly right.
This podcast gives you energy, and you've learned from it. And so I'm going to go there. You've learned from it. So what are some leadership things, 110 podcasts in, what are some things that really stick out to you that when you were sitting down with someone and you were going back and forth and you're like, wow, that's great leadership? Because I believe we as men never need to stop growing in our leadership because we're in different phases of life.
Agreed.
And so share with us some things that you've learned.
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing they all have in common, because literally we have men, women, we have CEOs, we have professional athletes, so it's such a random group of people. The one common thing I would tell you about all of them are in a pursuit to keep learning. That's the one thing they all have in common. None of them have reached the milestone.
Right.
They would tell you, I hadn't arrived yet. And we would say, oh, no, they've arrived. That's the one thing. They all are learners. I was interviewing a gentleman named Mark Rutland. Dr. Rutland was in a big denominational world here. And he's in his 70s now, still writing leadership, still has a leadership podcast, still runs a leadership company. And I said, what keeps you going? Here you are, 74. You're telling me books I've never heard of. How do you do that? He said, Mike, I met with a fighter pilot. And he said, the fighter pilot said, Mark, I reached a point I couldn't fly the plane anymore. I can't fly that plane. That's a young man's game. But I've got to train the next generation of fighter pilots. And he said, he looked at me and said, Mark, you got to get out of the cockpit. You can't fly that plane, but you better study and learn, because the next generation that flies them, you got to train them. And for me, I took that as, my day of getting in the cockpit, I'm at 52 now. There'll be a day I'm not in it anymore, but I got to keep going. I got to keep learning. I got to keep growing. And that's a constant theme. Second thing I would say in that is, all of them experienced adversity to the level they wanted to quit, but they didn't.
Wow.
Every one of them. Something didn't work out right. It was a family situation. Leadership pain. They all experienced leadership pain. What I would tell you about that group of people is their ability to stay in the game was just a little stronger than everybody else's.
Wow.
And their breakthrough, some of them came late, came unexpectedly. The third thing was, not one person on that list, I don't know what they make for corporate speaking engagements, not one of them charges. You know why? Because they know at the end of the day, I've been blessed to bless. Wow. And so they want to give back their story to bless others.
Wow.
Those are probably my three biggest lessons.
Yep. Jim Valvano.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And I think I'm going to go down a little road here. And you said a phrase, "Stay in the game," and caught my attention there for a few minutes. And I just see so many men who tap.
Yep.
And who don't stay in the game.
That's right.
Whether it's their marriage, whether it's work, whether it's their kids' lives. What is one of the keys to staying in the game?
A daily walk with Jesus.
Yeah.
That's it. I think outside that, we're manufacturing human effort. But we say this all the time in my Monday deal with us coaches and scouts. Get up every day and lock eyes with Jesus and just walk another step His direction. We only lose it when I get my eyes off. So if I'm going that way, I'm going to get there. It may be slow, but I'm going to get there. But if I look that way, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And so it's that daily, I think the key to staying in the game, all those guys would tell you, it's day by day obedience.
Right.
Day by day obedience.
And it looks different for everyone in the mornings.
That's right.
I just know one thing that I always cling to is, and the phrase I use almost every morning is, God, I need you today. I can't do this without you.
Yep.
And, I said, and that reminds me, I need to stay in the game. And so let's have a little fun. I think we're kind of winding down a little bit. I want to have a little fun here. So I'm going to give you a phrase, or I'm going to give you a name.
Okay.
I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. So we're going to have a little fun.
This is dangerous.
This is very dangerous. Let's go fun. All right, so let's start out with Liberty University. It's where you went to college. Tell us, what's the first thing that comes
Vision.
Vision.
Vision. That place sits there because of vision. That's what I always think of. when I think of Liberty, I think of the word vision, and I think that's where I met my wife.
Sure.
So it was a gold mine for me. Maybe, maybe not for her, but you don't get to meet her. So yeah.
All right. Let's go another one. Let's go church.
God's hope for the world. God's hope for the world. The church has got to work right, and we daggum screw this thing up so bad. I think God sits in heaven sometimes and goes, what happened? Did the owner's manual, was it not good enough? Y'all have you've really messed this thing up. The church has got to work because the church is the bride of Christ. It's got to work.
Yeah.
It's the hope of the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I say this all the time, there's a lot of arguments going back and forth, how to do church and things like that. And I look at people and I just say, one day all our theology is going to be corrected.
Yes.
And so let's not waste time and let's put our hands to the plows and make a difference in the lives of people.
Isn't that complicated?
No.
Just love people like Jesus did. We'll get there. Yeah.
All right. Greatest, because you're a former baseball player in college.
Yeah.
Greatest baseball moment of your career.
Yeah, man, that was easy. I only had one good one, so it makes it easy. So grew up a big Georgia Tech fan. Wasn't smart enough to go to Georgia Tech, so I ended up at Liberty where you just needed a pulse to get in. And so that's how Todd ended up there. Todd and I did. But I got to pitch against Georgia Tech and threw 4 scoreless against Georgia Tech at Tech with all my friends and family and my church in the bleachers. I should have quit that night.
I was going to say, you should have just hung them up.
The next game, I got lit up. But that night was that moment where you're like, okay, this was as good as it gets.
Right.
Yep, that was that for me.
All right, so I asked you about your greatest moment. What is your most difficult, most embarrassing moment as a college pitcher or in your baseball career?
Yeah. Well, that's a full folder. So I gave up. In fact, I was telling the story in the bullpen during the playoffs. I gave up back-to-back home runs, but not just on multiple pitches, on 3 straight pitches. So that was my low.
Low of the lows.
Yeah, the low of the lows. Yeah, man, you give up 3 dingers on 3 pitches, it's not a good feeling. Yeah, not a good feeling.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. My wife.
Yeah.
What do you think when you think about your wife?
Rock.
What comes to mind?
Glue. When God brought our lives together, He knew what I needed. And she was what I needed. She's my biggest cheerleader. She helped craft and shape our amazing kids. She's the rock and she's the glue.
Yep. My kids.
Unique, because they're so different, but man, they're friends. That's what I'd tell you.
Yeah.
They're friends.
Yeah.
I think we're both in that stage of life now. We chose to parent and not be popular.
Right.
But boy, the outgrowth of that is I would consider my son my best friend and my daughter would be my wife's best friend.
Wow. Yep. Awesome. And the last one, the last phrase I want to give you, and we'll kind of close on this and wrap things up. When it's all said and done. When it's all said and done. From Mike.
I think that I pray that people would say, I was glad to see him coming, not glad to see him going. And he left himself in me. He left a little bit of himself in me and left the place better than he found it.
Right.
And if that can happen and I remain faithful to the Lord, then that'll be a success.
Awesome. Wow. Well, Mike, I greatly appreciate you spending time with us this evening. What a joy it's been to almost reconnect with you in a lot of ways since our time at Liberty, where we didn't really know each other that well, but we've reconnected through circumstances. I want to tell you, I appreciate you because Mike is a guy in my life that I feel like I can pick up the phone and just go, hey, I got a question, or hey, hear me out. It goes back to what you were saying earlier, a part of having men in your life that you can connect with. Yep. So I'm thankful for you. Thank you. I am thankful for what God's doing with you at this church and in this community. And I just pray that God will continue to bless you and it only gets better from here.
Amen. Yep. Amen. Thanks, buddy.
Yep,
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate you guys joining us this evening. And I just encourage you as we close it out, if you're not connected with other men, find a way, be persistent, stay in the game, and find others to do life with.